Joe Rogan in the last couple of years has gotten into some really controversial topics when it comes to his podcast. It seems like he's branching out more into the culture war issues, and he's pissed a lot of people off. There's no question about it. He's flip-flopped certain opinions when it comes to the culture war. But one thing that he's been really adamant on has been the jab issue, has been the CV19 issue, and this is not changing today. A couple of days ago, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 days ago, he had RFK Jr. on his podcast, who is running for president, and he tweeted this out in response to Peter Hotez. Let's first actually read the tweet from Peter Hotez. Of course, who is a MD, PhD. Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's jab misinformation. It's really true. Anna Merlin, just awful. And from all the online attacks I'm receiving after this absurd podcast, it's clear many actually believe this nonsense. And you know what's funny? And I'll show you the clip later on in this video, but Joe Rogan actually had Peter Hotez on his podcast back in 2019 and also offered him to debate RFK Jr. back then on this same topic. So I'll show you that clip later on in this video. There's a lot of things that happened in the last couple of days regarding this topic. It's been pretty insane how viral this thread went, but Joe Rogan, like I said, is not backing down on this issue, no matter who it is that's trying to little boy him or little bro him on this issue. Joe Rogan's not backing down, and he responded to Peter and said, "Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I'm offering you $100,000 to the charity of your choice if you're willing to debate him on my show with no time limits." Let's see what Peter Hotez had to say to that. He said, "Joe, you have my cell, my email. I'm always willing to speak with you." So an easy dodge, a very obvious dodge of the debate. Of course, Peter Hotez doesn't want to debate RFK Jr. on this topic because all the data is on Joe Rogan and RFK Jr.'s side for this, specific topic. But Peter Hotez has to keep hammering home the same talking points that he has been hammering home for the last few years. He can't afford, he would lose so much respect in his field. He would lose so much of the connections that he has if he actually went against the narrative that he has been spewing for the last few years. If he actually joined Joe Rogan's side, if he didn't disagree entirely with Joe Rogan and with what RFK Jr. was saying on that podcast, then there would be big issues for him and his career. So he has to continue to hammer home this narrative and also avoid debate at all costs, because he will get turned into a clown. He will get turned into a laughingstock if he were to debate Joe Rogan or RFK Jr. on this topic. And Joe Rogan responds to that and says, "This is a non-answer. I challenged you publicly because you publicly quote tweeted and agreed with that dog shit Vice article. If you're really serious about what you stand for, you now have a massive opportunity for a debate that will reach the largest audience a discussion like this has ever had. If you think someone else is better qualified, suggest that person." And he also responded, and dude, like I said, man, he is not backing down. No matter who it is, Joe Rogan's not backing down on this issue. He's had enough. It seems like Joe Rogan has had enough of these people. And I don't blame him. All of us have had enough of these people for the longest time. I think Joe Rogan is one of the more measured people. He's one of the more calm people when it comes to these kinds of things. So the fact that Joe Rogan has finally reached his breaking point, has finally reached the point where he's like, you know what, I'm going after these people. I'm not sitting back and letting these people talk shit about my podcast anymore, about the information that is being presented on my podcast anymore. I'm tired of this. You're getting exposed unless you come on the podcast and actually defend your points. But you're not going to be allowed to just say whatever you want on Twitter about the stuff that I'm saying and my guests are saying on my podcast without any repercussions. It's not going to happen anymore. And this is a deleted tweet from Peter Hotez that Joe Rogan exposed. It says, "Be serious, Joe. That's what you throw out for your hunting buddies on a weekend. A $50 million endowment, which you, Spotify, RFK Jr. can easily afford. Not for me, so we can continue making low-cost, patent-free jabs for the world's poor." Preceded by RFK Jr.'s public apology. And then Peter Hotez responded to Joe Rogan once again and said, "Joe, if you are serious about addressing jabs, the fact that 200,000 unjabbed Americans needlessly perished during our awful Delta BA1 CV waves, including 40,000 in our state of Texas because they fell victim to jab disinformation, I want to have that discussion." And Joe Rogan responded and said, "Again, I'm going to ask you very clearly, are you willing to debate RFK on my podcast?" And of course, he's going to run from it once again. And he also tweeted this out. Like I said, he's not backing down, man. He's going after these people now. But Peter Hotez said, "I'm happy to come on and clear the air. I respect you and your show. I don't want an adversarial relationship. I think we can work well together." And Joe Rogan responded and said, "To those misunderstanding what he's saying, he's not agreeing to debate RFK. He's just offering to come on my show by himself to get more clout, to just say a bunch of nonsense that nobody can push back against, because Joe Rogan has other things to do rather than research the stuff that Peter Hotez researches on a daily basis. Peter Hotez, you can find data to back up pretty much any argument that you want. So I'm sure Peter Hotez has a ton of people sending him articles, sending him studies that back up his ideas, whereas RFK has his own articles and his own studies. So if they were to go at it, then it would actually be a really good debate. It would actually be able to prove something. But if Peter Hotez just goes on Joe Rogan's show, who's a comedian and just kind of living his life, not dedicating his life to researching jabs and things such as that, then it wouldn't really be much of a debate. It would just be Peter Hotez spewing the same ideals that he's been spewing for the last few years. So there's no point in him going on Joe Rogan's show just to talk about the same thing that he's always talked about, when Joe Rogan knows it's BS, but he just doesn't have the data and the studies to back it up like RFK does. Joe Rogan also tweeted this: "Are you sure I'm not part of a coalition with neo-fascist leanings? Seems like that's what you really think, or what you're projecting to the masses." And that's in response to the tweet saying, "I respect you and your show, and I would love to come on." Here is Peter Hotez talking trash about Joe Rogan. "I'm quite concerned about the Elon Tucker link. Then fold in Rogan and RFK Jr., and it becomes a pretty formidable coalition with neo-fascist leanings. In some ways darker, or perhaps more dangerous than Trump, in my opinion. Awful. I just hope Team Biden is preparing." Dude, this guy is embarrassing, and Joe Rogan is making it even worse for him. Tom Nichols responds and trying to defend his friend, I guess. "No medical professional should ever agree to do this. Never. It elevates the conspiracy guy, demeans the medical professional, and will only convince the kooks out there that RFK is right because a real doctor took the time to debate him. Or if he were to take the time to debate him, he could just, prove how much of a kook he is." I think that if all the numbers, if all the evidence is on the side of Peter Hotez, he could just easily go on Joe Rogan's podcast and totally destroy RFK. It wouldn't bring him any credibility if he went on there and got destroyed by Peter Hotez. That would completely probably end his career if he got destroyed by Peter Hotez on Joe Rogan's podcast, because it would be a huge platform where RFK Jr. would be able to either prove that he's right or get absolutely obliterated, like they claim the science, the numbers are all on their side. So why wouldn't that happen? I don't see how RFK Jr. going on Joe Rogan's podcast and getting destroyed by Peter Hotez would in any way benefit RFK Jr. or Joe Rogan's narrative or their careers. It wouldn't in any way would that be the case. Joe Rogan responded and said, "That would be a great suggestion if you could assure that the industry you were representing wasn't completely captured by heartless monsters who have a history of some of the biggest criminal fines in human history because their deception has cost hundreds of thousands of their lives. It would be a great suggestion if the industry you were defending didn't occasionally look at human beings as an opportunity to generate insane wealth regardless of the tragic consequences, but you can't do that. So maybe it would be a good idea to have an effing debate." It's true. Like, dude, I love this Joe Rogan. I hope this Joe Rogan is here to stay. And dude, a ton of people are here talking about this. A ton of people here are adding their money to the pot as well, and we'll talk about that in 1 second. But here is Zuby saying, "Speak." Here is Tim Pool reacting to the situation. "I am literally offering $100K to the total pot of 1.52 million in a desperate attempt to get the experts to debunk misinformation. We are begging them to disprove it, but they won't even try." And here is the original tweet saying that he will add 100K to Joe Rogan's debate offer. That's Tim Pool. I think this brings the total to around 800K. And then you look at all the people who have actually put in money for this to happen. We have Andrew Tate. We have, I don't know who this guy is, Nick Mugali. I'm sorry, I don't know who that is. Bill Ackman, Joe Rogan, Patrick Bet-David. There's a ton of people out there, man. And look at all these names, huge names, offering money, offering tons of money, 100K. Andrew Tate offered 500K just for Peter Hotez to debate RFK Jr. Now, I wonder if this 1.52 million was going straight to Peter Hotez instead of a charity, if he would take the debate. It's a good question to explore. I think he probably would take the debate and probably just take the money and run with it, but who knows? But it is going to a charity of his choice instead of Peter Hotez directly. And I said earlier in the video that we also had this clip where Joe Rogan was offering for Peter Hotez to debate RFK on the science of jabs back in 2019, but he declined. Let's check out this clip. Not the whole thing, just a little bit of it here.
Now, I know that Robert Kennedy Jr. is he's a big one. He's a big one, yeah. And he seems like a very intelligent guy. How could he not be aware of the science behind this, and what is he getting wrong?
What he's getting wrong is just about everything. He's formed an organization called Children's Health Defense.
If he's getting everything wrong, then it should be extremely easy. You shouldn't even have to prepare for the debate. It shouldn't even take you that much time. Just go over to Joe Rogan's studio, destroy Robert Kennedy in a debate, and then leave. It shouldn't even take that much time, man. You should be in and out in an hour and a half because RFK Jr. is wrong about literally everything. So just present your facts and then move on. Take the 1.5 million, donate it to a good charity of your choice. And, it's a huge win for you, huge loss for RFK and Joe Rogan, and move on about your day.
And he had a press conference about it. I think it was September, October of last year. It is probably one of the best organized anti-vaccine groups out there. Now, he's doing other things other than vaccines. He's doing a lot of things about environmental health and things like that. I don't know any part of that business. I've only followed what he does with vaccines, but it's all nonsense.
Why is he doing this about vaccines?
I don't know. What's his motive? I mean, you have to ask him what's his motivation.
Would he be a guy that you would want to have a debate with or have a discussion with?
But again, I mean, I'm uncomfortable with the idea of a debate because it's like debating. I don't know. It's like debating a Holocaust denier whether the Holocaust exists. I mean, not that this rises to the same level.
I understand what you're saying, but if you're, again, I want to bring this up. If you're complaining there's 19 books ahead of yours that are anti-vaccine books, you've already lost the battle. Like, it's time to regroup, and maybe regrouping would be confronting someone with actual scientific information. I mean, you are a real doctor. You're a guy who actually studies this, and you're a man who understands the science. You're a legitimate academic. You could actually put a dent in this with a real conversation.
Potentially.
Yeah. I mean, what would he be able to say? Like, what is his take on it?
Well, remember, he's an attorney, and he's very clever, right? And you know, he knows how to presume.
In other words, I'm intimidated by his debating skills, so I don't want to debate him on this topic, even though he's extremely wrong. He's an attorney, so I'm intimidated by his, debating skills, by his conversation skills.
Probably knows how to do arguments in court, and what am I? I'm a scientist.
Right, but do you think that he wants to deceive people, or do you think that maybe he's just incorrect in his accumulation of data?
Yeah, I can't say what his motivation is, but his information is highly misleading.
No,
I think it's pretty obvious. It would be pretty obvious during the debate if RFK was trying to deceive people, if he was arguing in bad faith. I think we're smart enough to understand that now on who is arguing in bad faith and who isn't. Right now, it seems like Peter Hotez is definitely the bad faith actor, whereas RFK is actually in pursuit of truth along with Joe Rogan. Let me know what you're thinking about this whole situation in the comments. It's been pretty insane. We have Tim Pool, like I said, Andrew Tate, Patrick Bet-David, so many people out there adding to the pot of $1.52 million that Joe Rogan is offering Peter Hotez to simply come on his show and debate RFK, which he claims is extremely wrong about everything, and all the facts are on Peter Hotez's side. So I don't really understand why he would ever decline $1.52 million to a charity of his choice. It doesn't make any sense to me. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments about Joe Rogan going and destroying Peter Hotez. All of his credibility so far, unless he ends up accepting the debate, all of his credibility is out the window for everyone who isn't also involved in the same field as he is. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments about this whole situation.